In this video, we are refilling these 20-ounce CO2 bottles. These are Power Shot and our Jetpack bottles from a larger CO2 tank. This is a 20-pound mother bottle using our Power Filler 2 Transfill tool, inverted tank transfill stand, power wrench, and a super scale. First, let's start talking about what kind of bottles we can fill with our Power Filler 2. So on the end here, a thread and adapter for a CGA 323 style valve. And so that's going to be common on your smaller CO2 bottles, and there are two styles. There's a pin valve. This is the one you're going to find most commonly, especially for paintball. So to open this valve, you depress the pin, and that releases the CO2. So whatever you're screwing on there will push that pin down, opening the valve. Over here, this is less common, but this is what we use with our adjustable regulators, so it mimics our power tanks. We have an on-off valve, which we control with this knob rather than a pin. So we have manual control of this, where this is activated by the regulator itself. So any of these bottles, as long as it has this style thread, can be filled with our power filler. All right, next we're going to talk about the mother bottle. All right, so on the other end of your Power Filler 2, this connects to a CGA320 valve. The CGA320 valve is found on all other CO2 tanks found in the US. It's standardized across the country. Everything from 5 to 20 to 50-pound CO2 bottles, you're going to find this valve. There are two things I want to note about your mother bottle. The first is only about 80% of the CO2 by weight is going to be usable to fill your Power Shot bottles or your smaller CJ323 bottles. And that's because that's about how much liquid CO2 is in this bottle. The rest is CO2 vapor sitting at the top. And then on a related note, when you're filling, you want to make sure that you're getting the liquid CO2 to your bottle through the filler. So on something like this, a 20 or 10 or a 5-pound bottle, you'll want to invert the tank. That way the liquid goes to the bottom and it flows out of the valve. If you have a larger 50-pound bottle or something that's difficult to invert, you can actually get them from your welding gas supplier, and it will have a dip tube or siphon tube, essentially a straw that's going to go down inside the bottle, pull liquid from the bottom, so you can fill with the bottle right side up. This bottle doesn't have a dip tube, so we're going to invert it using our Transfill stand. If you have a bracket, you can simply just take your mother bottle out of the bracket, flip it over 180, put it back in the bracket, and secure it tightly. That will accomplish the same thing. Some final equipment you'll need, you can source from us, or you can supply it on your own. They're pretty commonly available, is a couple wrenches and a scale. We'll talk about the scale first. So the important thing on your scale, this is a digital one. What's nice about it is it has a zero function or a tare function, which means I can put my bottle here and then I could zero it out, and that way I'm only measuring the CO2 that I'm adding. The other thing you want is to be able to measure in ounces. On the wrench side, you'll need a 1/2-inch wrench to operate the screw on top of your filler, and a 1 1/8 wrench for the nipple assembly here. This is a 10-inch crescent that works. If you get a power wrench included with some of our packages, then it has both. 1 1/8 here and 1/2-inch there. So this makes it really easy, really convenient to use your power filler. Now that we have our equipment sorted out, let's talk temperature. The Power Filler 2 is a transfill tool, which means it does not have an inline pump. We have to help this to get the best fills we can, and the way to do that is to have a 40-degree Fahrenheit temperature differential between our fill bottle and our mother bottle. Now, we want to chill our fill bottle. Typically, we'll stick it in the freezer for about ½ an hour. We keep a chest freezer outside, but your standard home freezer would work. What you don't want to do is heat your mother bottle with a torch or an external heater. Two reasons. One, you can increase the internal pressure beyond safe limits. And two, you can actually affect the heat treating of the aluminum of the bottle, making it dangerous. So you always want to chill the fill bottle If you don't have a freezer handy, or if you're in the field and you need to quickly chill it, I'll go over that process later in the video. But for now, I'm going to go grab a bottle from the freezer and we'll fill it right in front of you. All right, so we are ready to fill. I have my fill bottle fresh from the freezer, nice and cold. I have my 20-pound full ready to go. My ITT stand is assembled. Take a look how this webbing is. So we have the short end through the front this way, comes out, and then it comes this way. So that way it'll protect the finish of the bottle like that. All my equipment's ready, power filler there, scale's ready, has batteries, and you'll notice I'm now wearing PPE. So gloves, we don't want to get frostbite, eyewear, don't want anything shooting in our eyes. And then also, if you're doing this indoors, you want to make sure you open your windows and your doors. Make sure it's in a well-ventilated area, but we recommend filling outside if you can. So I'm going to go open the door and we'll get started. Okay, so back on this side, I'm going to put my 20-pound bottle into my inverted tank stand. Okay. All right, I'll just pull it tight. It doesn't have to be completely secure, but you do want it snug so it's not going to fall over on you. And then double check that your valve is coming straight out. Just makes it easier to access. All right. So I'm going to put my power filler onto my mother bottle. Okay, I'm going to use my wrench, make sure this is tight. It only needs about 10-15 pounds of pressure, or 2-finger tight. The seal is going to do the rest. And then while I'm here, I'm going to double check that this vent knob, this screw, what it does is it controls the venting out of this hole. So one, you want to make sure that nothing's in the way of this, especially your eyes. But we can control it with that valve. Screw. So I'm going to close it, make sure that's closed, and we'll double check that later as well. All right, so you can tell it's really frosty, nice and cold. So I'm just going to screw this into the 3-2-3 side. And this is the jetpack bottle with an on-off valve, which means I don't need to depress the pin with this screw up or down, it doesn't matter. But I do need to open the valve on this bottle. So I'm going to open it like that. All right, so now that's open. CO2 can flow in and out. We always want to make sure our fill bottle is empty. So my mother bottle is closed, my fill bottle is open, and now I'm going to vent anything that's in my fill bottle. By opening that, it was empty, good. Now I'm going to close this again, and we can continue on. All right, I'm going to put my bottle on the scale. Make sure nothing's kind of hanging off of it. All right, and I'm going to zero the scale. Perfect. Now, before I do anything, I always want to double check that, double check my valves. You have 3 valves that you're checking. Your mother bottle, make sure that's closed. Your vent knob, make sure that's closed. And your bottle. Either this is depressed down on your pin valve to open it, or you have your on-off knob open. So that's open, okay? So now I checked all that. I'm going to crack the valve on my mother bottle. And you can hear the CO2 flow. That's what's great about this system. Really simple. And you're watching the scale. So, check that out. I'm going to close my mother bottle now. All right, so check this out. We actually overfilled our bottle, and that's why we're using a scale. Instead of The max fill on this bottle is 20 ounces. We went to 22.5. So we need to make sure to go at or below the max fill. Otherwise, this is liable to overpressurize when it gets up to ambient temperatures or hotter. So what we can do is, our mother bottle is closed. We were watching it, so we closed it as it was going over. And now we can vent any remaining or any extra through our vent knob. So you want to make sure that this channel is free where the vent's going from that way. I'm going to take my wrench and just slowly crack it open. All right, vent knob is shut. I'm going to close the valve on my on-off knob there. Okay, so everything is closed. Now it's safe to kind of talk about what just happened. Because our fill bottle had such a large temperature differential, it was very, very cold. It had a much lower pressure, which basically sucks the CO2 from the mother bottle into the fill bottle, and it can overfill itself. So yeah, that's, again, watch your scale. Now, I mentioned temperature. When CO2 gets warmer, the bottle pressure increases. Your normal bottle pressure is about 500 to 800 psi, but the max pressure is 3,000. And at 3,000 psi, this burst disc right here will burst and vent all the CO2, keeping it from becoming dangerous. Okay, it's going to be release it in a controlled manner. The reason, and you'll notice that I went down to 19.3 ounces instead of a full 20, that just gives me a little extra headroom at the top, which means instead of max temperature of about 120, 130 degrees, now I can safely transport this at up to 140, 150, which is going to be very difficult to reach in normal conditions. All right, so now all my valves are closed. I'm ready to disconnect. What I'm going to do is actually double check my fill bottle is closed by turning that knob. It's closed, and my mother bottle is closed. I'm going to open my vent, and that just releases any CO2 in the power filler, making this much easier to disconnect. There's no pressure pushing on this, making it easy to unscrew. So that bottle's filled, ready to go. Let me put my cap on. This protects the threads. It's a soft brass thread, so if it drops, you can damage the threads unless you have your cap. All right, so next we're going to do the pin valve bottle. I'm going to speed through it because the process is largely the same, but first I'm going to show you how to field chill the bottle and highlight the main difference between the on-off valve and the pin valve bottles. So the key difference here is our fill bottle is roughly the same temperature as our mother bottle, which means we will not get a full fill. If you don't have a freezer or something to chill your fill bottle, we'll show you how to field chill it. But first, let's highlight the difference between our on-off valve and our pin valve. When you connect it to the power filler on the pin valve, you have to manually open that pin valve by screwing this knob down. Okay, so now this bottle is open, and before I do anything, before I zero my scale, I want to ensure that this bottle is empty. The way I do that is I make sure that my mother bottle is closed, and then I open my vent. Nothing's coming out. That means my bottle was completely empty, and now I know that I'm safe to start filling from 0 ounces. Okay, so now after I ensure that's empty is when I want to zero my scale. Okay, vent knob is closed, fill bottle is open. I'm going to open my mother bottle, and I'm just going to put a couple ounces in my bottle. All right, five ounces may even be a little much, but that's all we need. So my mother bottle is closed. I manually closed that, and my fill bottle is still open. What I'm going to do is open my vent. All right, I'm going to close my vent knob. So my mother bottle, my vent knob is closed, and my pin valve is open. Okay, so by venting that small amount of CO2, that couple ounces of CO2, we actually were able to chill the bottle. As that liquid expands, it absorbs heat, making it sucks heat from the bottle, making the bottle colder. We weren't able to get it all the way back down to 0, and that's because in this process we actually formed some dry ice. And you can hear it kind of shaking around in there. But because we're confident that we started with a completely empty bottle by opening our vent beforehand, we can safely fill this even with that starting ½ ounce or so. So let's kind of get this in position again. All right, vent is closed. Let's crack this open. And again, we can just listen to the CO2 flow into our fill bottle. This time I have my hand on the mother bottle to make sure that I don't overfill like last time. Oh, and I still didn't catch it in time. But again, we're just going to vent a little out. Perfect. All right, so mother bottle is closed, vent knob is closed. I'm going to close my fill bottle by opening this screw, unscrewing this screw. Okay. And then just like before, I still have some CO2 trapped in my line, so I'm going to vent it out of my vent. All right, and that's how you fill your 20-ounce Power Shot bottles and Jetpack bottles. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below. I'll respond to every comment to make sure I get those questions answered for you. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next video.